So a very big welcome to the latest installment in the Race Network Leads and Future Leaders event series, or I believe is a masterclass because of the expert speakers. So I'm Javid Thomas, co-founder of Race Equality Matters, along with the fantastic Raj Tulsiani of Green Park. I'm also the founder of the Collaboratory, which creates collaborations to tackle societal issues that matter the most. Race Equality Matters is a not-for-profit, and it aims to be a catalyst to move organizations and individuals from conversations and talk to meaningful action that has a real impact, and impact is really important. Looking after our own and each other's mental health is a common discussion or question raised by our network. Those with lived experience of race inequality are significantly impacted, especially in the last 2 years, but forever, I appreciate that. And so we want to dedicate a whole event on this extremely important topic. We also acknowledge that this week will be particularly difficult for many following the horrific events in Buffalo, and which happened nearly 2 years ago from George Floyd's murder. So it reminds us progress has been very slow. Sadly, we're hearing of experiences and experiencing things regularly, which naturally impacts on our own mental health and our well-being. We just want to share a slide that many of you may have seen, but we just think, and I'll say 30 seconds, maybe just to reflect, and some of you can share for yourselves and your colleagues. We will share this with yourselves afterwards if you want to use it, but I think these words are, can be used multi-times in the year, I'm sure, but hopefully can help support each other. I guess it also makes today's event even more purposeful, and therefore we are delighted to in some way help make a difference to you and your colleagues. And this will be because we've got joined by some fantastic selection of very special speakers. We have Alicia Nagar, Startwell delivery consultant for Mental Health First Aid England. We also have Esther, Kwan from the head of COVID-19 Inquiry Unit for the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. Justin Placide, head of Home Energy, Retrofit Enablers and co-chair of the FAME Network and the Civil Service Race Forum at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, I think BEIS, sorry. And we also have the wonderful Natalie Rose for Corporate HSE Advisor from HS2 and co-chair of their Reach Network. So a massive thank you to all, and you'll be hearing from them shortly. As you may hopefully know, Race Equality Matters creates concepts and solutions in collaboration with those with lived experience of racial inequality. The key is to help organizations make the impact we all want to see and indeed feel. So just to introduce you to some of, so there's quite a few new people here today, some of our solutions. So we've got Race Equality Week, where we galvanize thousands of organizations and 1 million+ employees to take part in activity that continues the momentum to drive race equality. It's not a pop-up, it's to continue the momentum. The third one will be the 6th to 12th of February 2023. Get it in your diaries now. The second one we have is Safe Space, which is a 2-hour facilitated dialogue between 3 to 5 EXCO board members and up to 10 ethnic minority colleagues. It is in a protected environment, Chatham House rules, that enables brave conversations, uncomfortable discussions, but most importantly, it's action focused. There has to be action on the back of it. It's not a listening circle. Thirdly is the Big Promise, which is all about turning words into action. In a nutshell, colleagues throughout your organization individually choose a big promise from a list of those that with lived experience of race inequality have identified will make a meaningful impact. These promises are known as the Magnificent Seven. So choose a promise, promote it, and keep it. The fourth thing is Tea Break, a 1-hour themed online discussion about an issue that matters, typically through Zoom or Teams platforms, so individuals can remain anonymous and feel safe to speak up. It enables organizations on an ongoing basis to hear how its staff is thinking and feeling. It's so powerful. We know a number of organizations are going to do a tea break, with a George Floyd anniversary coming up. And then we've got My Name Is, which is all about the importance of pronouncing other people's names correctly and using phonetic spelling to support this. But it's to change the narrative where we encourage ourselves to make sure we're getting people's names right. And this has been done in collaboration with Edelman, where we launched an amazing phonetic tool, which we'll share a link with you later. but it's had 50,000 social posts, which is 1.7 billion impressions. So it shows how important getting people's names right is. Please do look at it. We are a not-for-profit, and we can't do this without the support of our fantastic partners, especially Green Park and lifetime visionary partner BT, and founding partners Auto Trader, Data Marketing Association, Edelman, and HS2. Their support means you can access all the resources in events like this for free. And we must acknowledge that, our fantastic speakers have given up their time for free. I appreciate there's an issue about paying and everything, but it's all about how can we help each other in this case. So please do get in touch if you want to sponsor or marketing opportunities or make a donation to support this work so we can keep it going for yourselves. A bit of housekeeping. We'll be recording today's event so you can access it later. Please do share any questions in the chat. You'll be audio disabled. If we've got time, there'll be a Q&A at the end where, we'll ask you to put it in the chat. Please do tweet about this, and the handles on the right so we can get more people to know about this important issue. Thank you. So can we just kick off with a quick poll, and we'll share the results with you if you can do this. So this is just what we call State of the Nation. If we can launch the poll.
So results from the poll. So here today, 72% identify as ethnic minority or appropriate equivalent, 28% allies. So a nice mix. In organizations, 47% are race network leads, 12% future race network leads, and 23% race network members. Gives us a good sense of who's in the room. Why have joined today's event? 85% to learn, 69% to be inspired, and 47% to collaborate, and 45% network. So, which is good to know. And we'll do a lot of that today. How well do you think your organization tackles race inequality? So fairly well to really well is 34%. Not enough to not at all is 28%. So yes, still quite a way to go for a number of organizations. Does your race network have a senior sponsor? So 64% saying yes, 16% say no. So 64% is pretty decent, because we know a lot of organizations before didn't have a senior sponsor, and we think it's quite crucial. Do you feel your network has influence in your organization? I think this is absolutely crucial, and not at all or not enough is 31%. A good amount and a great deal is 30%, and a little is 39%. So I think there's some progress to over the last couple of years, but still a way to go. The whole thing is they aren't just to be support groups, and they're very important for well-being, but we want them to have impact, influence, and have teeth, as someone told us. Does your network have co-chairs? Yes, 62%. So it's really important it's shared. 29% said no. So our experience is the more that can be shared, the less the burden is on an individual, and it all helps our well-being. Does your network have a working committee? So again, 68% saying yes, 23% saying no. It needs to be shared. So, someone does the minutes, someone does the invites, someone maybe find the content and the speakers. We have found some organization where it's just one person doing everything. It's far too much. It's unpaid in your own time, and it does impact on all our mental health. Question 9, how well do you think your organization supports ethnic minority employees' mental health and well-being? 35% not enough or not at all. So that's 1 in 3 do not feel they're getting support they need. 35%, so again, roughly 1 in 3, a little, and a fair amount and a great deal is 30%. So not getting enough support compared to how other colleagues may experience it. How well do you think your organization supports your own mental health and well-being? A fair amount, 39%, and 70% saying a great deal. So 56% do feel personally they're getting some decent support, and there is still some not getting enough or at all. And we know it's such an important issue to get the support we need, hence the importance of today's event. So hopefully we can energize and inspire people from wonderful expert speakers to give you some tips and some guidance of how to look after your own and your communities and your networks and your members' mental well-being. Thank you.
So quick, the agenda. So today's event will be fast-paced and interactive. We'll have collaborative chats and discussions. I'll be carrying out an interview with our guest speakers, and then with time we'll have a quick Q&A at the end to pick up anything that we may have missed, and we're looking to close at 1:45. Okay, thank you. So today's theme is all about looking after mental health and well-being at work, a theme that's highly topical and so very important. We're having today's event following the invaluable Mental Health Awareness Week, which was last week, as we believe a focus on mental health is important all year long, not just for 1 week. So we purposely are doing it outside that week. I have the honour now of introducing our first guest, Alicia Nagar from Mental Health First Aid England. Please unmute yourself, Alicia. Alicia is the Startwell delivery consultant and is a member of the CIPD with over 14 years experience in human resources. She spent several years working in organizational development and diversity and inclusion. She's an employee well-being and mental health specialist and mental health trainer, and was responsible for successfully introducing and embedding a mental health first aid service into her last workplace as part of a comprehensive and impactful inclusion strategy. So she's been on both sides of the desk, as they say. Alicia's led race inclusion projects, such as introducing a leadership development program for people of color and ensuring that unique ethnic and cultural experiences of mental health are recognized in her work. She's passionate about creating workplaces where people are truly able to bring their whole selves to work, working alongside everyone from equality network leads to senior leaders. So thank you for joining us today. We all know good mental health and well-being is crucial to thrive in the workplace. However, racism, COVID, the murder of George Floyd and what happened in America this weekend are other significant incidences that have a huge impact on people from an ethnic minority background, and it continues to do so. So can we just ask Alicia first question, as an expert in this area, can you expand on how people from an ethnic minority backgrounds might have been affected?
And thank you, Jarvid, for having me today. Excuse me. So I'll start with COVID then. So there's been lots of research and evidence around why people of colour and Black people have been disproportionately affected. One such report was by Business in the Community in 2021, and they found that people of colour are more likely to face financial insecurity, bereavement, job losses, and lower access to care, which are all risk factors for poor mental health conditions, which increase their vulnerability. The City Mental Health Alliance also published some research in 2021, and they agreed that people of colour were more likely to have had experiences during the pandemic that have contributed to poor mental health as well. So if we could have the statistics from that report up as well. So yeah, the next few statistics demonstrate how people of colour are more likely to say that they don't feel that the workplace is as inclusive as they would like, and they feel pressure to change their behaviour to fit in compared to their white counterparts. So that's, yeah, things around not fitting in, changing behaviour, and not being able to be themselves, which all contribute to loneliness as well. So thinking about Mental Health Awareness Week last week, for which the theme was loneliness, you know, that is a recognised risk factor for mental health conditions. And, you know, when you can't be yourself in the workplace, that really does impact your ability to feel, you know, in an environment where you're supported. And then moving on to, you mentioned George Floyd, and it is around the anniversary right now. You know, whilst it's positive that, you know, we're talking about race equality more, and, you know, lots of people are being proactive in providing that support, there is the other side of that, which is that, you know, it can be triggering for people of colour and Black people, particularly thinking about the George Floyd murder. You know, it can bring back traumatic experiences that they might have had, and it highlights inequalities. And, you know, as that slide, you know, really sympathetically showed at the beginning, it's, you know, at this time of year when people are remembering that, it can bring that impact back again as well. So overall, you know, all of these things compound to be exhausting, which again is a big risk factor for mental health conditions.
I think just in the chat, Claire mentioned about Stephen Lawrence. I know a number of organisations did recognise it recently. You mentioned it may be forgotten. I think it might not be in the news as much, but I know people from ethnic minority community within our network do talk about it quite a lot. And like Alicia saying, there's a number of things ongoing that can trigger. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge this is the baseline for most people, and how can we support, because Stephen Lawrence and George Floyd and other things like that they're fact and they will always be there now. So how can organizations support their ethnic minority employees' well-being, and what internal resources and support can they put in place?
So I think one of the key ways is these networks, so staff networks around different characteristics, including race networks, but making sure they're effective and really integrated into the organisation. So making sure that they're safe spaces in any way that the organisation can, and that bringing them into consultation around race equality work, asking for their opinion on things like policy development and equalities work that's happening across the organisation, and really value the contribution of that network. So, not particularly or necessarily providing a financial reward, but, in some places I see it tied into promotions processes. I see it recognised in performance reviews, that kind of thing. So, really kind of valuing the support and input of that network and listening to them as well, listening to people of colour and Black people across the organisation. And one such way you can do that is through these networks. And then taking action, as you mentioned earlier, taking action based on that feedback you get as well. Having a senior sponsor can be really, really effective as well. Someone at that top table who can really push that agenda forward and kind of be the face of it across the organisation. Another thing that's really helpful is having mental health first aiders. And it's really important that they're representative of the staff group. So, making sure there are people of colour and Black people represented in that group as well, and other intersectional kind of characteristics and represented in that reflect the staff cohort. Education and awareness raising for all staff and for managers as well. So there are some brilliant training programs and trainers out there around race equality, but also there's lots of stuff on the internet now, and there's lots of self-learning people can do. And, creating spaces for people to have conversations as well. It doesn't have to be about bringing trainers in. You can just, you can do that self-learning and create those brave spaces as you were talking about. Also representation. So, seeing people of colour and Black people in senior posts, bringing them into projects. So you're hearing all the voices in that room and across the staff cohort, at events and in campaigns, making sure that you can see those people and hear those people. And really kind of embedding inclusion into everything that's done. So that might be reviewing kind of your existing policies, so HR policies, for example, through an anti-racist lens, to see where they might disadvantage people of colour as well. So really just looking at the whole piece. We do have some resources on our website at Mental Health First Aid England as part of the My Whole Self package, and I can share a link in the chat after my section. And
I think picking up what Alicia said is there are a number of things here, and our theme is action, not just words. So I think if all your organizations are walking the walk and implement some of these or showing ethnic diversity at leadership level, then obviously they are helping by default. It's where they're not doing anything, that's where the impact will continue. You touched upon, and I know it's your organization, Mental Health First Aiders, and I've heard from many organizations the fantastic impact they have in their organizations. But we also hear that for many ethnic minority employees, there aren't Mental Health First Aid Englanders, aiders, with lived experience. So how can organizations encourage more from an ethnic minority background to become a mental health first aider?
Okay, so we know that people of colour and Black people have different experiences to white people around mental health. So, for example, they might have access treatment through police or criminal justice route. They're more likely to have and experience restrictive interventions, things like that. Recovery through IAPT is significantly lower for people of colour than their white counterparts. And that was published in a Mind Briefing document in 2020. But because of things like this, people of colour know that their experiences are different from their white counterparts. So they really want to speak to someone they can relate to immediately. They don't want to have to spend time contextualising everything. So in order to encourage more people of colour and Black people to be mental health first aiders, I would say initially reach out directly to the group. So that might be via these race equality groups. And if you are a lead of one of these race equality groups, you can proactively approach whoever looks after the first mental health first aiders as well, and ensure that the training is culturally inclusive as well. So, our program, 2-day program, really does make sure that it's culturally inclusive. but there's lots that the instructor can do as well to really build that conversation into the program, and communicate this. So when you're recruiting mental health first aiders, talk about how it's culturally inclusive. Let your staff know that that's really important to you as an organisation, and perhaps consider using trainers that are people of colour as well. Again, referring back to the previous point of, people that might feel more comfortable talking to a mental health first aider or being trained by people in mental health around that, and then profile the people that are already mental health first aiders and people of colour as well. So, you might do that as part of a race equality campaign, but you might just do that as part of the mental health first aid campaign, but just make sure people can see those people that are of colour that have already taken on these roles. And again, our guidance does include, information about making sure that your mental health first aid recruitment processes are reflective of your staff cohort as well. So worth checking that out as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And just share everyone, you can get access to this recording after, so a lot of great stuff Alicia shared, you'll be able to access for that, and also afterwards we'll be sharing some links and my whole self campaign, etc. So yeah, that'll be coming. Just to wrap up on a quick couple of questions, Alicia. So what advice would you give Race Network leaders, which many of are here today, when it comes to looking after their own well-being and of their members?
So I would say, in terms of your own well-being, use the services that are available across, your organisation and other places. So you might have an employee assistance programme, for example. Make sure you're aware of that, and make sure your members are aware of that as well. It's really useful to have a bank of resources available that are specifically available for Black people and people of colour. So there's organisations like Black Minds Matter, the Black African and Asian Therapy Network. Make yourself aware of them and make sure your members are aware. Encourage your organisation to publish that as well. Flair, and I just saw someone from Flair is actually at this meeting, recently posted on LinkedIn a list of really good organisations that people can reach out to. So I'll share that link to their post in the chat afterwards. But look around for these things, make sure they're available. And in terms of the network, make sure that it's a safe space. Psychological safety is really important in these kind of groups. So talk to them, ask them what that means for different people, because it will mean different things for different people, and create that safe space, and as I said, signpost and make sure they're aware of other services, both internal and external, and otherwise use your position to advocate and influence the organisation to be more inclusive. So as I mentioned earlier, in terms of mental health first aiders and making sure they're representative, although it's the organisation's responsibility to make sure that that's the case, there's no reason that as a Race Network lead you can't be proactive and approach other members of staff and say, we want to be involved with this and we can help you recruit mental health first aiders that are people of colour. So use your position as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, later on throughout this event, we'll be sharing some links for more support people can access. Final question. We're going to say Mental First England have a new and exciting project called Start Well. Can you just share in 60 seconds more about it?
Yeah, sure. So primarily it's a diagnostic service that enables you to understand your organisation, and we do that through things like survey, focus groups, and interviews. But the best thing about it is we can break down the data by different groups. So that can be by seniority or your location if you're multi-site, but it can also be by protected characteristics, including race. So we can really drill down into what your people and people of colour, obviously for this audience, they really need in order to support their mental health and well-being. And then we offer bespoke recommendations on how to achieve these as well, so that you can target your resources in the right places and the right people. And obviously, we've already talked about how people of colour have been disproportionately impacted. So, improving their mental health and well-being will also, raise the overall mental health and well-being of your staff.
Thank you. And again, we'll share more information on that later on after.
Sorry, just to add, Javed, all the people in this network, also at today's meeting, we would offer a discount to if you were interested in Start Well. So do drop us a line if that's of interest.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alicia, and we'll come back to you later, hopefully in the Q&A. So we now have the pleasure of introducing our next two guests, and if they can unmute themselves, that'd be fantastic, and screens on. Esther is the head of COVID-19 Inquiry Unit for the Department for Levelling Up Housing Communities. She's a unique breadth of policy experience covering both domestic and international policy issues. She's advised ministers and senior Whitehall officials on high-profile policies, including a multi-billion-pound policy portfolio within industrial strategy and foreign development assistance to the Middle East. Esther is also the policy lead for the Civil Service Race Forum, which is the umbrella organisation for the ethnic minority networks across the whole of the civil service, so massive. Justin is the head of Home Energy Retrofit Enablers team from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. He is responsible for encouraging energy performance improvements in existing properties. He leads his team on policy development, project delivery and service management, helping government work towards achieving the net zero target. Justin is also the co-chair of the Civil Service Race Forum and co-chair of the Faith and Minority Ethnic Network, FAME. Thank you both for joining us today. So people often become a race network leader without a leadership background, which can be stressful. Many have told us it's hard to stay motivated as it can be challenging and also a very isolated, lonely role. So Justin, how did you set yourself up to support yourself and your well-being when you stepped into the role?
Javid, really interesting question. And just before I jump straight into that, I just want to say hello to everyone. Just check in as Javid's already done before to make sure you're right. And also as well, just please, whatever any of this panel says is really going to benefit you because there's some amazing panelists here. So for me, I think I was quite lucky. In the role that I got elected for, it was a co-chair role. So there were two leaders. So we were able to work off each other and help support each other. So that was my former chair, Sharon Lowe. And I think for me, something around when speaking to a number of different networks, and we have 62 network leaders across the whole of the UK. Majority of those people, and Javid, you've already mentioned this yourself, do really long hours, have really busy day jobs, and actually it's, you know, they're not getting paid to do it. They're volunteering their time. So for me, I think one of the things when I first got into the role, I didn't realize at that time how much time it would take me away from my family and friends. I was very much in a space where I wanted to be really good at the job. So I did loads of reading, I did all of the stakeholder engagement, I attended other events. And what I realized was how much that was impacting on my time. And not having time for self-care started to take a toll on me. But also as well, and this probably is what a number of network leaders and people who are on this online call know, is that when people start coming to you for advice or want to talk to you and just have that sort of sympathetic ear, taking on board those stories can also as well be quite draining. So the way that I managed to support myself was really understanding what was triggering me, what was making me feel a little bit nervous. And I think one of those things was being really clear on the time that I could actually commit in that role. So being really clear to people that if I was going to speak to them, I could only give maybe 20 minutes instead of an hour, which is what they were expecting. Being really clear, and you've mentioned this as well, if I did provide any advice or any action, I would make sure that they followed through. Because for me, like anyone else, what I don't want is someone to come to me for help. I've offered them either some of my own lived experience or things that have helped me. That person then walks away and doesn't actually take it on board, because then I get disappointed. So once again, it's knowing where my triggers lie. So I think for me is one, just in a nutshell, as they say, surround yourself with people that you trust and that care about you and can also as well spot the signs. I think there's a lot around that self-care. How much time can you truly commit to this role as a network leader without it impacting on you personally? And then finally, three, always try to keep yourself aware of what's going on. So as Alicia mentioned around mental health first aiders, there are not enough people of color who are mental health first aiders. So one straight away is that, why is that? So understand the reason why that, and then being able to articulate it. So if I'm talking about race, I can also as well talk about mental health. And a lot of this information is out there, and I would encourage anyone, once again, find out the information.
Thank you very much. And I will just mention about sharing the I'm calling it the low the responsibility. The tea break, which was, I said, architect by the Cultural Fusion Network in Network Rail, enables to discuss about topics and subject matters and to share the thinking. And actually it's a really good way to sort of to I said, then it'd be the one-to-one strong interaction. And then lead for yourself, Esther. So as I said, this week's been very difficult for many race network leads, and as I said, in your own time and using up your energy, how do you stay motivated and also look after your well-being on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, thanks so much, David. And hello, everyone. Again, great to meet you all, and really glad to be here today to share my 2 cents on well-being and staying motivated. So I support Justin on the policy side of the race network. And one of the things that I really do find as a motivator is just having good leadership above you, right? And Justin, I'm not saying this only because you're on the call with me, but truly having great leaders who would be able to push you, to motivate you, and to encourage you, especially in this space. It's so important. There were so many times when, I had to call up Justin when you are sort of emotionally drained and you're stuck with a particular problem. If you don't have great leadership above you, it's extremely hard to stay motivated. And I'm extremely lucky to have, leaders like Justin, whom, he's just at the end of the, on the other side of the call, whenever I would like to, call him up on things. The other thing related to that is finding your role models. You need to be inspired, right? And finding the sort of role models within the sort of spaces that you occupy is also a really great way to stay motivated, right? Because they could obviously mentor you, to coach you. And I myself have sourced a lot of mentors and coaches in this particular space to keep me sort of motivated too. And related to that is having your sort of network of supporters, right? Who are your sort of champions, right? Who's within your sort of community who could actually uplift you, right? So, for my own experience, having my very supportive line managers, having the sort of like role models within the sort of system who is supportive of my work and could encourage me and inspire me has been pivotal to staying motivated. You should also take the time, right, to celebrate the wins, however big or small they may be. And I regularly take the time with my team, right, to do that sort of stock take, to ask the team, what was one thing that you were proud of achieving this week, right? And it doesn't even need to be related to, the work that you're doing as a network. It could even just be something that is personal, right? But just setting that sort of precedent for celebrating, right, amongst our community. I don't think we do that enough, to be honest, right? Celebrating the different wins that we have. And finally, staying sort of focused on the long term. This is not something that could be changed overnight. You have to stay focused that you are going into this for the long haul and being realistic about what you can actually achieve, right? With the sort of capacity constraints that you're under. And as Justin alluded to, we're all very busy individuals who are volunteering our time, right? Without getting paid for doing any of this work. So be realistic, right? So related to that in terms of well-being aspects, how I sort of stay sane, right, is, going back to Justin's point, protecting your time is so important. And if you as a leader can't model this, and how would you expect your sort of team members to be able to also have that sort of like ability to protect their own time, right? So you got to practice what you preach. The other thing is, find things that bring you joy, right? And is life-giving, and being self-aware enough to know what are your sort of triggers, as Justin mentioned earlier, and being attuned to how you're actually feeling. And that is a journey for all of us. And I myself am also on that journey too. You have to take charge of your own well-being. It is your responsibility, right? So for me, I know that if I go on social media, right, I am going to go into these sort of like rabbit holes, and I am going to get sort of super demotivated and depressed, right? So you just need to find that you need to sort of unplug yourself if that is your trigger, right? Know what sort of triggers you. Also find out what recharges you too, right? So I love cooking. I love going out for walks, right? Take that time, slot it into your schedule and diary to make sure that, and I'm actually quite bad at this, right? But really sort of schedule and say, for instance, if you don't have a habit of actually taking lunch breaks, and if you are taking lunch breaks during meetings, I would just advise you, block out that time in your calendar to say, please everyone respect the time that I have. I need that sort of lunch break, right? To have my sort of like well-being and sanity. And on to the breaks point, I just want to say that it is absolutely okay, right? To take a break, in doing anything that is network related. And I've had to sort of like, and I, in fact, I'm taking a step back away from SysRef in the coming months, right? To know that you need to sort of just like give yourself, right, that sort of space and time to reflect. Okay. Don't give yourself such a hard time to say, oh, if I'm not doing this, then everything's going to crumble, everything's going to fall apart, right? Again, we're going in for this in the long run, and you don't want to burn out, right? So know your sort of limits. And finally, when to know that you have to just disengage. Sometimes in the sort of structures and systems that you're in, maybe the stars are not aligned right now. In order for you to actually progress on anything that is meaningful or anything that you think is worthy of your time, you sometimes just need to know when you have hit that sort of like brick wall, so to speak. And I've had that sort of moments, a couple of months ago where I said, you know what, I can't be in certain sort of spaces anymore. And I'm actually just going to, take a step back and disengage, right? It is absolutely not your fault, right? Just knowing what your sort of like, expectations are, as well as knowing what is within the realms of possibility within the circumstance that you're in. And I think it's really important to stay, sane.
Thank you. Two or three things. I think one is be aware of our own triggers. Absolutely important. I think the other thing, I call it refueling the energy. And I saw somewhere, a few people in the chat said, learn to say, become to say no. No is such an important protective word. So thank you for that. Justin, in your experience, what underlying issues might race network leaders and members be facing, and what can be done to support this? And I know there's a few senior leaders here, so it'd be quite good for them to hear this.
I'll start from the sort of basics, and I think a number of people in the chat have actually already highlighted that. I think there's something around training. Let's be honest, some people get involved in either being members of a network or become network leaders because they can see an issue, they can see a problem that they feel that they can hopefully help solve, but that may not mean that they have the tools or techniques to help them deal with that. So I definitely think that there needs to be some sort of like clear training, and that's for any network leader, for any protected or non-protected characteristic. There needs to be some sort of training. There also as well needs to be communication. I've seen and experienced a number of network leaders who have spoken to their members with a level of not intentionally disrespect, but it comes across like that, and that may have either been the tone that they've used, or actually they've not fully listened to what the members wanted. So there needs to be something around communication between people. And I think there's something, and we've alluded to this, and Esther, once again, one of the reasons why I wanted her to be on this particular session today, which is a great session already, because I've also as well relied on Esther, because not only does she have the D&I experience, but she also as well has the lived experience from an East Asian view that I wouldn't have. It's the same thing again. Surround yourself with people who can provide different views and aspects. These will help you when, say, for example, one of your members may have a issue or a question which is culturally sensitive, which you may just not be aware of, and be calm and cool and accept that, and then go and seek help from someone who may want to, may know, or may be able to have some synergy in order to help that member. I think the other thing as well with regards to network leaders, and this is probably going to be a theme throughout everything, is time. So very much, once again, I want to repeat about protecting your time. If you're in a role which is a volunteering role, you probably have a very busy day job. The day job has to come first. No organization will turn around and say, great, you did all of this race network stuff, but actually you didn't do the job that we pay you for. So really understand the balance between what you're expected to do in your day job and what you want to do as a volunteer. And then finally, I think some of the other issues can just be the amount of pressure that comes from different directions, depending on the size of your network, depending on the organization that you're in. And I feel, once again, having conversations with other network leaders in your organization is a great starting point, because you'll probably find out that a number of them are also as well suffering with the same underlying issues. And one of the best ways to hopefully overcome or combat some of those issues is to share. So as they say, a problem aired is a problem shared. And that, to me, sometimes I think some network leaders don't realize the power in bringing a collective together and being honest and saying, I don't have all of the answers, but how can we work together to create some solutions?
I think that collaboration is really important. A couple of things I've
Yeah.
noticed people saying, you talked about training and support, and people say we haven't got budget. That's why I'm going to suggest Race Equality Matters exists. It creates ideas and shares things like today. Today it's free for everyone, so you're learning. Well, I'm learning tons today, and I think that's why we exist. If we carry on keep getting funds, we can keep this going. So I think there is training. We appreciate some stuff you have to pay for, but there is hearing people here today and the links you'll get will help you out on that. So I'm just going to jump to the final question. So like we're in 30 seconds each. We'll start watch. We understand how challenging it is, especially in the last couple of years being a race network leader. But despite the challenges, what do you enjoy most about the role, Esther?
Okay, great. Thanks, Javed. What I most enjoy about the role is being surrounded, right, as Justin said, by people who are different than you. I've had so many different perspectives thrown at me about race, and I really just relish at that opportunity to engage in difference, right? Similarly, we can't work in silos. And I think, knowing that we are in solidarity with one another, I've met this fantastic community throughout my days in civil service race forum. They're basically my family now. And, Justin, I would equally call you sort of like my second fam, because we've been working on this front for so long. So I've gained friends, right? I've gained friends for life. And also being able to support individuals on their development journey has been something that I relish so much about being able to lead the policy work strand, seeing how my sort of members have been able to flourish into their respective roles has been immensely fulfilling.
And same question to you, Justin.
So I'll keep it really quick because Esther's already hit a number of points I wanted to hit. But for me, I think it's around being able to solve problems, especially within the D&I space. And I say the D&I spaces because, of course, if you're a person of color, you're more than your leading characteristic. So if there's an issue, say, for example, with regards to representation, and you've worked well as a network to help work with seniors, to help work with HR to change that, and to actually have that senior representation that looks like you and comes from the same background, that is something I've enjoyed doing. I think meeting people, so meeting people like yourself, Javid and Donna, we've spoken, we've got similar interests, but actually coming together, we can create these kind of moments which may help people that I may never meet in my whole life, but they may pick one or two things that either I've said or another panel member has said that actually helps empower them when they go back. So I would say for me, they're probably the things I probably enjoy most is definitely helping people, but definitely also as well solving problems that are affecting our people.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'd just like to add, I think the race network leaders and the future ones, you are so important in creating change we need. And just to say, it's gone about its community. We've got over 1,000 race network leaders in our community now. That's current net leaders, and then future leaders on top of that. So echoing what Justin says, we're helping bring everyone together on that. So, and united, I think we'll create a change. I appreciate on their own not. So thank you both for your valuable time and your advice and suggestions, and we'll share this footage with everyone afterwards, so I think it doesn't ever get lost. I'm conscious of time, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip this collaborative discussion and go straight on to our next speaker, actually, if that's okay, who's Natalie from HS2. Natalie Rose, if you can unmute yourself, if you've done that, thank you. Natalie's corporate health, safety and environment advisor and co-chair of the REACH, which is a race, ethnicity and cultural heritage network at HS2. She and they have been a fantastic support to us, and one of our funding partners. And I just want to say, even though they fund us, she's on stage, I'll call it on stage, because of what she's going to share. You don't pay to get on stage. I'll make that very, very clear. She believes equality, diversity, inclusion is also related to workforce safety and well-being, and hopes that through her work, she's able to create safe space and the space for everyone to feel safe and secure at work. She's also a health and well-being champion and trained mental health first aider. Connection with Alicia there. Thank you for giving us your time today. It's been a tough couple of years, Natalie, and although often rewarding, being a race network leader can generally be extremely demanding and challenging, especially as in most cases, it's not your main job, which it's been talked about a few times here. What has been some of the challenges you've experienced in looking after your own well-being?
Thank you for the question, Javed, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. What have been some of the challenges? I'll pick out a few. I mean, and a lot of them have already been said, to be honest. The first one would be, for me, compassion fatigue, which should not be mixed up with burnout. But it's listening and hearing everyone's woes, stresses, etc. Can be quite mentally exhausting, and when you're trying to balance that against an actual genuine passion to want to help people, that can be a real tough challenge. It definitely drains us sometimes. We'll get to the end of a week and be like, wow, that was a really intense week. Another challenge is what I sort of inferred earlier, that personal investments that I've made a personal investment, not only of my time, but of my brain power, of my mental capacity, and a lot of time my physical presence, which will link on to my next point. Well, that means, because I'm so personally invested, if we get any setbacks, if the network gets any setbacks, I tend to take that quite personally. It isn't something I'm being paid to do, so I'm more likely to physically feel that as almost offensive. So that can be a challenge sometimes. And lastly, again, Justin mentioned this earlier, but that whole balancing the day job with the network activities, that is probably by far my biggest challenge, because it's so easy to let yourself go down a rabbit hole of, I say rabbit hole, but just let yourself go off into something that you're really personally invested in and you really enjoy. On the plus side for me, I'm finding a lot of synergy between my day job and the network leadership. For example, I can talk about cases where we know that not looking after someone from a race perspective or a cultural heritage perspective can actually be detrimental to their health, their physical and mental health. So that uniquely is helps me in a way that I actually lead the network and I can push a lot of things through at HS2. But nevertheless, I'm still constantly balancing and making sure that, well, me and Ruby, my co-chair, that we're giving the right amount of time, because what we don't want to happen is someone turns around to us and says, well, you've not done XXX in your day job because you've been busy running the network. And we don't pay to do that, and then pull interest or funding away from that. So I'd say those are the three top challenges for me.
Brilliant, thank you. And I guess the question we're asking everyone is, how have you managed to support yourself through these challenges?
Yeah, and again, Justin mentioned it earlier, that when you first start running a network and you decide to take up a role as co-chair or chair, I don't think anyone can predict how much time, effort, and energy that might take from you until you start doing it. So I would say the biggest support for me is having a co-chair. I would absolutely. I mean, I saw 68% of the audience today have a co-chair, which is absolutely, for me, a really important point. It means that you can share all of the heavy lifting, and that could be mental heavy lifting or physical heavy lifting of, meetings and discussions, and that it cuts all of those types of compassion fatigue that I just mentioned in half. And we can also give sort of unofficial coaching to one another. Myself and my co-chair, we work in different parts of the organisation, and we can often share conversations that we've had from different parts of the business. And also, I think Esther mentioned this earlier actually, about the ability to disengage. Everyone needs a time and to make time to disengage from network activities, network leadership activities, and having a co-chair enables you to do that. I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was suffering from burnout, and I said to Ruby, I'm going to need to just step back for a bit. There's a lot going on. I need to step back. Can you do XXX? And it of course was yes. And vice versa, Ruby's been in the same place. And it's useful to have a co-chair. Another one is being realistic, being really realistic about what we can achieve as a network, and not overstepping the mark and going into the EDI space, which is, we've got a fantastic EDI team at HS2 who are paid to do what they do. A reminder again, we are not paid to do this. So we have a really clear terms of reference. We've also developed a network strategy, which stops us from jumping too far ahead in terms of what we expect from one another and the business, because we're following the strategy and we're sticking to that terms of reference. I would highly recommend writing down what you intend to do, and sometimes reminding yourself of that, because you can, with your passion, get carried away and go off doing something else. So that helps me stay real about what I can do in terms of time and effort, because we can't boil the ocean at the end of the day. If we've got some ideas, 9 times out of 10, if you have an idea, and this has happened to me even just in this past week, where I've had an idea and I've remembered actually it's in my strategy plan for next year, so I need to park it now and not get into it. And another way that I've supported myself is through mentoring. At HS2 we have a reverse mentoring program, which is fantastic. I had a great reverse mentor last year, and in the end it just ended up with us both sort of mentoring each other, to be honest. Also courses, you can request courses. There are free courses you can go on. I've written one down actually. It's the Radius Employee Network Leadership Program. I took that, it was fantastic. Also put the pressure if needed onto your D&I teams and ask them to source some training for you if possible. Sometimes it can be a challenge with funding, but if you can demonstrate that the activities of your network is actually contributing to employee EVP, is what we call it, employee value proposition. If it's making people feel better at work, then they should invest in that. Also, I would say having a confidant. So we, as well as having my reverse mentor, we have an exec sponsor who I meet with once a month, and I can definitely offload onto him with him being our CEO and let him know what's happening. But I also have someone that's quite close to me in my directorate who I speak to quite a lot about leadership and just support and guidance in general, just offloading, because I'm careful not to put too much on Ruby and vice versa as co-chairs. But also is getting the business to see that actually investing in training us all will actually in turn benefit the business. Because if you know, this is race network leads and future leads. We all want to lead something in the future. So if you can convince your business that investing in you leading would be good for them, then it's always good.
I would say I think in all organizations, chief race officer, paid job, because there's more to do. I think important for something Nick and Natalie said, and Esther, is the fact that we want to do so much, I think, boiling the ocean, and actually it can be demoralizing because you can't, it's impossible. But I think what Esther said is actually we need to celebrate the every little victory and recharge ourselves. So we balance that, because we're all very mostly negative thinking quite often, than looking back, and having people around you, like you've all said, they can just say, look, don't forget what we have achieved. So that's brilliant. And I think the other thing is, you know, your network members have a tough time. How do you support them with their well-being?
So we have a version of Safe Space, which we call Courageous Conversations. It's something that was coined Courageous Conversations by Jacobs, who worked closely with HS2. And that's simply a conversation format. So it's a session that we hold for an hour, the last Thursday of every month, and we invite our membership and anyone else actually. But the invite goes out to our members to come and talk about any other topics. So, for example, this month's Courageous Conversation, with it being Mental Health Awareness Week last week, we will be talking about mental health amongst the BAME community. That will be next Thursday. So we hold that once a month. It's had a significant impact on people at HS2, actually. In many, many different ways, because it's not just for Black and Asian and minority ethnic groups, it's also for our allies as well. So we hold this session, we pick a topic, people come, they talk, people just come and listen, they learn. We've heard lots of positive news stories about people contacting each other outside of Courageous Conversations based on what's been said inside a Courageous Conversation. And we always underpin that. We always start that off by creating a safe space, letting everyone know it's that safe space. It's almost like Chatham House rules. We ask people not to discuss anything that might be subject to a HR investigation. But really importantly, what we also do is proactively, and it's probably me in my day job, with putting my day job hat on, proactively encourage people to access the occupational health and wellbeing services that we have at HS2 should they need to, but also they can reach out to us. We do tend to have an open door policy on our committee, but again, just being careful of that first point, not verging into compassion fatigue. But we do have a lot of support, and we do have mental health first aiders, and you did mention earlier that I'm one of them, so I do encourage people, reach out to me if you need to. So there's a constant sort of drip feed of support for our members.
Brilliant, thank you. And a couple of things you mentioned. So on our website, you'll find access to Tea Break, as I said, co-created with Cultural Fusion Network Rail, which is very similar to Courageous Conversations, and also Safe Space. And actually, both of them have been co-collaborated also with Mental Health First Aid England, because mental health is at the heart of it. So please feel free to access some of the stuff Natalie said. There may be versions on our website for you to access. And the final question, because obviously a very difficult, challenging conversation we've all been having, but you all do this and wake up the next day and you're a network lead again. So despite the challenge, what do you enjoy most about the role?
Personal satisfaction for me. I genuinely feel like I'm adding to the culture and texture of the organisation. The unfortunate murder of George Floyd opened up that conversation and started the conversation, and I really wanted to hold my organisation to account, and I wanted to make sure that, great that we've started this conversation, but how do we continue that? And whenever I poke the bear and have a look at what's going on behind me to see if there are any actions happening, it is gradually. Someone mentioned earlier as well, we need to understand that what we're trying to do is we're not going to be able to turn the switch on tomorrow and everything's going to be perfect in the world. It's slow sort of progressive steps, which I'm really proud to say that I think that our network is doing and is making within our organisation. So personal satisfaction, absolutely. We can see that change happening. People are now starting to get what we're trying to do, which is, we're not trying to stand outside the organisation as an island. We're trying to align with what the organisation is trying to do. And we do that by aligning our terms of reference and our strategy to the overall EDI strategy at HS2, and also tapping into the other directorates in our team. So for example, within the organisation, So for example, contacting our skills, employment and education teams and seeing what their plan is for the year. They might be doing a number of school visits in a predominantly minority ethnic area. And I'll challenge them, have you thought about who are you sending to that? People like to see that people can only be what they can see. Who are you sending? And we challenge them. Our community and stakeholder engagement teams, you're going out into the community and you're talking to people. How are you representing yourself at HS2? I think it's really important. And I can see that change. I can see people now thinking, oh, they'll come to us, which leads to my final point. People come to us as a network, as network member committee. They'll reach out to us for support and guidance. So I'm putting together this event in the middle of Birmingham, and it's a reggae festival. How should our approach be? What should we do? Would you come along? Can you ask your members to come and support HS2? And that's introduced a whole new layer of engagement. We've also got someone really senior in our organisation who's recently this week reached out to us to say, I want to understand what the BAME population feels at HS2 in my directorate, because my stats are telling me a different story to what I appear to be feeling when I walk into an office. So that really makes me happy to know that people are actually thinking, oh, I'll go and ask Natalie or Ruby and all the answer to that, or let's see what the Reach Network say. So I do feel that we're making a difference.
So, fantastic when it's seen as a real asset and business necessity. So thanks, tons, absolutely inspiring. Now I'm conscious of time. I'm going to also say behind the scenes, one of our laptops batteries is running out. Obviously we haven't got enough funding. So we are struggling. We can't pay the funds. So we may lose some slides. Just to let people know that there may be a slight glitch. But what we'd like to just do is a quick final poll, if that's okay. And then what we might say, because we're overrunning, if the speakers can, we can take 5 minutes of Q&A at the end. So we'll go beyond the 1:45. We appreciate it's people's lunchtime, but we will try and squeeze a tiny bit of Q&A in, but we will overrun. But if we can just do the poll to see, because this helps us understand what was helpful for this event and how we can, make them even better in the future. Not better is the wrong word. As productive as we can. I know I was inspired.
So really pleased to see the first poll result. 98% would recommend today's event to others. So obviously huge thank you to our wonderful and inspiring speakers who collectively scored between 97 and 99% of sharing helpful advice and guidance. Does your network hold tea break or courageous conversation sessions? So 1 in 3 do, the rest don't. And we could see in the chat and conversations earlier that actually more organizations would like to hold a tea break and courageous conversations. And we'll talk more about that over the year and share how you can run it with our tea break, how to do it right guide and workshops. Were the discussion chats and the Q&A insightful? 85% said yes, which is fantastic. An important thing is we're about action, not just words. So do you think you'll implement something you learned today? So not only did we learn some inspiring stuff today, but 88% of us feel we will implement something, which is fantastic. And again, testament to the wonderful speakers and how they explained what they do and how it makes a difference. Did this event deliver any of the following for you? So 85% said they learnt. Networking was 39%. We appreciate we didn't have as many breakout sessions as normal, but 68% felt inspiration. And especially with such a hard, tough topic, it's good that we feel inspired at the end of this. Do you think today's event will help you manage your mental health and well-being? So 51% said a good amount to a great deal, which is great. So more than half of us are leaving here feeling it will help us. And do you think today's event will help you support your colleagues' mental health and well-being? So again, that's 60% a good deal to a great deal. So yeah, not at all, not enough, only 2%. So, we could say close to 98% feel it will make a difference to help each of us support our colleagues. So well done and thank you all. And thanks for sharing this information.